Okay, so going back to the actual film itself, I wanted to draw your attention to one of the scenes that occurs pretty early on in the movie, where Brendan is getting an introduction to what the illuminators that he sees every day of his life, what they think of as a master illuminator. And this should be, of course, an introduction for us as well, to how illuminators were perceived during their time period. So I just wanted to replay this scene for you all. Okay, here we go.
Such as Brother Aidan of Iona.
Aidan, aye. Aidan's indeed the great one.
Who is Brother Aidan?
A sage.
The wisest one of them all.
The perfect illuminator.
Well, where is he then?
Okay, now I'm going to pause here for just a second so to remind you that we're looking, one of the things I asked you to look for on your worksheet was places in which there were circles or swirls or lines and right angles. And so I want you to pay attention as you watch this clip.
He lives on a tiny island called Iona. There is an abbey on the island where he works on a magnificent book. The Book of Iona.
The book was begun 200 years ago under the orders of none other than Saint Columcille himself.
The Book of Iona outshines all others because of the miracle of Columcille's third eye.
No, not because of his third eye. Because of his 3 hands with 12 fingers on each.
That's not true. He had a third eye, not a third hand. Have you not heard about the eye of Columcille?
Of course. But that was for making the prophecies. His third hand was for beginning the book.
Enough! Just tell the boy about Brother Aidan.
His writings are said to glow from the pages as though they are light.
Sinners have been blinded while glancing upon the page. For to gaze upon the book is to gaze upon heaven itself.
The Book of Iona. But where is Iona?
It is far, far away in the sea, like all islands should be. A beautiful place where illuminators do not have to build walls.
But the abbot says that islands are too easy to attack.
Brenda, are you still here? You better bring the abbot those plants, or you'll be in big trouble.
Uncle!
Hurry, boy.
Okay, so a few things I wanted to draw your attention to here. I'm going to restart this here for just a second. You can see this. Here we go. First of all, you can see the sort of heritage to comic books and comic frames that the illustrators of this film are drawing our attention to here, where we see Aidan passing time by going from right to left across the screen and passing through various frames on his way to go see his uncle. You can see the different kinds of parts of the village that he's going through in order to get there, as represented by these frames. It's interesting because we don't have like a following shot where we're not actually following the character. Instead, he's passing through the frames in front of us. And so really, they're drawing our attention to the way that this film is constructed, that is a constructed narrative that adheres to certain kinds of filmic techniques that we read in a way that has this heritage to books. This is very important within this film. This dialogue back and forth between the ways that books communicate to us and the ways that they're communicating information to us about books through the medium of film. It's part of what makes this film so fascinating. And of course, they start off talking in this clip about the Book of Iona. Now, just to be clear, the Book of Iona becomes the Book of Kells. The Book of Iona was started, the Book of Kells was started in Iona, and then due to the wars that were raging during this time period in Ireland, the manuscript was moved from Iona to Kells, and it was finished in Kells, and it became known as the Book of Kells. Also, I asked you in your last worksheet how long you thought it would take to create an illuminated manuscript. The wording of that question was rather vague. So some people seem to think that I was asking, how long would it take to make one page? Versus some people interpret it as how long it would take to make one whole book. And that's fine. There was not a right answer or a wrong answer. It was just meant to get you thinking about the process. And I hope you noticed in this clip that they said that the Book of Iona, that the illuminators have been working on it for, they believed, up to 200 years. And we don't know to this day, but we're guessing based on what we know about the kind of labor that goes into creating an illuminated manuscript and the kind of manuscript, that the Book of Kells ended up being, that it took somewhere between 200 and 400 years to create that book. And how much it would cost is priceless. There can be no price put on the Book of Kells, or any kind of book it was made so long ago with not just such attention to detail and labor that was put in by the individuals, but also the cost of the materials, and then the fact that it was able to be preserved for so many centuries that they just cannot be replaced. That's all there is to it. There's not enough money to buy it. So what is left of the Book of Kells is stored in a museum. Very special, tightly locked museum. All right. Now, to go back here to images, here, again, to go back to the worksheet, I asked you all to list places in the film where you saw representations of circles, swirls, or right angles. And hopefully what you discovered in making your lists and paying attention to the film is that there were different categories that were associated with circles or with swirls or with right angles. Now with circles, we tended to see images that were associated with magic or protection or care. You can see here in this first image up here on the left that there is the wall. This is a circle around the tower in the middle of Kells. And then we have the ring, the circle of forest that is around the circle of wall that's supposed to mimic that. So we have these sort of rings of circles that are meant to provide varying layers of protection to the villagers of Kells. Then also when you go down here to see the scriptorium is often shown as a sort of semicircle. And within that semicircle, there are swirls. So the semicircle, I think, is supposed to represent that the scriptorium is its own sort of protection, but it is an incomplete kind of protection. It's only half of a circle. But what creates the other side of the protection within the scriptorium and also within the forest is magic. And this magic, I think we're supposed to view it on an equal plane as faith, perhaps even religious faith. That this magic is believing in something that's bigger than yourself, believing in something that's bigger than what you can see, and believing in something that is giving back to people that you don't necessarily know, and maybe not necessarily right in front of you. In other words, you're creating a legacy for down the road. You're not just worried about what's happening today in your world. You're worried about what's going to happen in the future, and you're trying to provide for people that you don't even really know. And so there's that magic in that. Now, the circles and the swirls are juxtaposed with the right angles. The right angles are absolutely correlated with culture or society, in this case, religious society. So you see the scaffolding, all the right angles of the scaffolding that the abbot is using to build his wall around his abbey, which also is very angular as a tower in the center of the circle. The abbot himself is very angular, has a lot of right angles. Also, the invading Norsemen, a lot of right angles.